Hello and welcome. You're listening to The Power Reclamation Show, where we explore the mysteries, heartbreaks, and resiliency of the human experience. Together, we'll focus on rewilding ourselves through raising consciousness and dismantling domestication. This is a collective journey of challenging hierarchical systems of power over, as well as our own personal conditioning and limiting belief systems. This show is about embodying the power of love, presence, and our own inner authority. Hello and welcome back. Today I want to talk about the world and humanity's place in it, a topic that's pretty loaded, filled with polarizing opinions and strong emotions. I haven't known how to orient here in the United States as the chaos of 2025 has been unfolding, but it's not just America, it's the whole world. Humanity has been circling the drain of recapitulating perpetrator and victim dynasties century after century. And you may have heard me speak about the internal dilemma that I have frequently felt about how informed I want to stay. I watch myself and my friends who consume the news, and undesirably, we become whirling dervishes of fear and despair from the content and the oversaturation. And I also watch myself and friends who turn away from looking too closely. And what I see is an innocent attempt of self-care by titrating the overload of information and shock, which almost always has a tale of guilt smacking us in the face for not keeping up enough, an underlying fear that we will be sideswiped for being too out of touch. So what's one to do when there are these two extremes at play? How do we keep a pulse on the reality of what's unfolding while also tending to the impacts of overconsumption on our psyche, our emotional states, our energy body, and our physical body? The reality of what's unfolding, even as I use that term, reality, I kind of smirk because, well, reality is subjective. Reality is a cosmology driven by our personal beliefs and our cultural conditioning, as well as the unique strategies that we each curate to protect ourselves from uncertainty and to galvanize behaviors that will reinforce how we each uniquely find order inside of chaos. You know what I'm talking about. Some people, they just have all the answers and they're so convinced and clear, while others admit that they don't have the answers and they choose to be quiet or pray silently. While others consume the news looking for a guru with the answers. There are so many approaches to how we seek safety in a world that feels so tumultuous, unpredictable, and unsafe. If we have all the answers, then we're in control. We're safe. No one can hurt us, right? Well, not exactly, because each one of us is not AI, an intelligence that can create an algorithm to solve almost any problem. We are humans with beating hearts and vulnerabilities that live within our physical, emotional, and psychological landscapes. And equally, we are energy bodies with life force and the power to create, destroy, and transform. We're a physical body constituted by millions of little tiny living beings whose sole purpose is to sustain harmony and life inside of us, which translates into supporting our existence. These quiet and microscopic allies, such as mitochondria, DNA, and cellular power, these exquisite and separate units of wholeness, driving a larger form of life, the me we call ourselves, this me, whom often feels separate inside of all this wholeness. How ironic is that? We are humans, some say, with a soul's destiny that we're here to fulfill. We are part of creation that contributes to the evolution and in some cases the extinction of life. We are an inherent spark of the mystery, a force of power that can't be controlled, curated, and packaged into a safe bubble of comfort and clarity while living in a human form. We are constantly thrust into change, loss, and redefinition. And so naturally, when chaos hits, we seek understanding and we seek frameworks to support a reality that allows us to find purpose, or at least a reason to keep going. We seek a map to escort us across the seemingly impassable terrain. And some of us will lean into false hope, others into dark despair, and others into distraction and avoidance, while others into fear-based busyness. The list of protective patterns is seemingly endless. And I often find with clients and with myself that if we become too identified with our suffering, we can't see how our pain fits into the larger frame of our lives, our growth, and our power reclamation. And conversely, if we're too focused on the meta, big picture view of our suffering, we might just be bypassing our human emotions and our human needs because, quite frankly, it's safer to plow past them than it is to feel them. It's an ongoing dance. So, where are you, dear listener? What is your frame and how you're holding the world as it is in this moment? And more importantly, your place in it. This exploration today is not about political partisanship. It's not about focusing on the individuals to whom many of us perceive are at cause for the wrathful path of evil and self-serving destruction across the globe. Whether that's the Middle East, international sex trafficking compounds, new species going extinct every day, or the political division in the USA at this time. Today, I want to riff on a frame of reality that I find compelling. It's not the answer to human suffering, but it is a doorway to explore what's unfolding through the lens of biology, spirit, and mythology, all woven within the cycle of life that includes birth, death, extinction, and eventually a regeneration of life that can only take shape as a result of the generosity and sometimes the peril of our previous ancestors. When it comes to navigating the current chaos of humanity, I have quietly been searching for a frame from which I can hold reality as it is and not get further lost in fear or separation. And when I say that, I don't mean I'm trying to avoid feeling fear and separation because that's not likely going to happen, but rather I'm intending to feel my emotions fully. And when the waves pass, I hold the intention to return to my inner ground, to the intelligence of my heart, my higher self, and the guiding light of who I wish to live as during my final days on this earth. As a human in a world of dissociation, trauma, and both emotional and spiritual bypassing strategies employed as a form of innocent protection, it's a devoted practice to learn how to welcome everything. Here's how the brilliant Sufi poet Rumi shared about this devotional practice of welcoming everything way back in the 13th century through his poem titled The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. There are many cosmologies of how to hold reality, and I don't claim to know the absolute truth. But as a creator, just like you, I like to play with versions of reality to expand my thinking and access a higher intelligence of potential. We can look at what's unfolding across the globe through the splits that occur in our human psyche, the schisms that cause and reinforce a sense of separation, or we can look through the lens of cosmic forces of light and dark, aka the perpetrators and the saviors, and the victims. And of course, there are many other viewfinders in which we can frame and explore from. But today, I want to examine all of this through the lens of the mythical journey of evolution through biology. It's fascinating to map the terrain of how countless species across 5 mass extinctions on this planet have demonstrated a desire to live, survive, and even surpass surviving into the art of thriving through evolution. And what I share may make you feel uncomfortable, or you may think I'm talking gibberish, or you may even find some solace in an aspect of this narrative. Whatever it is, I'm here to receive your experience, and feel free to reach out and email what your thoughts are. I am not suggesting that this is the one and only path of how to hold reality. It's just one that I'm chewing on right now. And it's one that's giving me some sense of perspective and quieting in my nervous system. I believe that speaking outside of the frames of normalized conceptual reality is one way we expand our thinking, our storytelling, and our narrative about what is possible beyond our wildest dreams. But as most of us know, sometimes our wildest dreams, they ask us to leave behind who we've been and how we've made sense out of reality. The creative thinking, dreaming, and visioning that exist outside of our familiar boxes also live outside of our comfort zone. And this can feel really threatening at first. Why? Because we seek familiarity. We subconsciously seek to reinforce the narratives and views of reality that are familiar to our beliefs as a means to maintain safety and control. And of course, there is no one way and there's no right way to hold reality. Rather, there is a creative freedom we each have to reinforce the world we see or open our mind to explore what else is possible beyond our cognition. I want to begin this exploration by sharing about the impact I felt last year when watching the Netflix series produced by Steven Spielberg and narrated by Morgan Freeman called Life on Our Planet. The series replicates the cycle of 5 mass extinctions on planet Earth. Each cycle included a deep dive into understanding dynasties of life that evolved as a result of the extinction of previous life forms. Without each prior extinction, the following life forms and evolutionary arcs would likely not have occurred. One creature's death was another creature's birth into existence. Each cycle of extinction brought an unexpected rebirth. One extinction cycle resimulated the long dominating reign of the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs were one of the largest reptiles ever to walk the earth. And according to one theory, in one fell swoop, a meteor crossed Earth's membrane and eradicated this prolific life form after 160 million years of reigning here. In one singular day, this occurred. And then life continued. Not in the form we once knew, but in another dynamic and creative expression. The period following the dinosaur extinction, known as the Paleogene period, saw a rapid rise in mammal diversity and the expansion of mammals, including the ancestors of modern primates. The Paleogene period was a crucial time for the diversification of mammals, birds, and reptiles as they took advantage of the ecological niches left open by the extinction of the dinosaurs. The common thread is that no matter how dire the destructions, massive floods, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, meteor explosions on Earth, life always comes back. So, where am I going with all of this? Well, my thinking today was sparked by a podcast episode that my friend Capers sent to me last week featuring Dr. Zach Bush, who eloquently shares his philosophy of humans' destiny through a biological and agricultural evolution, destruction, and cleanup project. He has spearheaded many movements underway to stop the bleeding and help humanity embrace a universal repair process. Dr. Bush begins with a deep dive into the biology of healing and what he has learned over years through his laboratory studies on cancer cells, mitochondria power, and cellular repair. His emphasis is on a root cause of all illness, which is related to the diminishing nature of biodiversity, as well as the loss of connection to a larger belonging. At a macrocosm level, one contribution to the loss of biodiversity on the planet is caused by dangerous toxins seeping into our soil, waterways, and air, which means these toxins are also seeping into our gut, our lymph system, and our lungs. He elaborates on how this macrocosm across the soils and the energy lines of the planet mirror a microcosmic level of the loss of biodiversity that's actually occurring simultaneously in our human body, which is the damage and disease born from our colon not getting the resources to combat the levels of toxin in our food sources, medications, and the list goes on. Yes, the toxic implications of high levels of plastic, glyphosate, metals, and other poisons are landing right in our digestive tracts and spreading to our organs, bloodstream, brain, and entire body. Our body is mirroring the same loss of biodiversity that the planet is experiencing. He extrapolates on the evolutionary arc of these impacts on all living species, which is too detailed for today's conversation, but you can learn more, and I'll add his website into the show notes. Dr. Bush opens by saying, humanity only changes direction when there is a crisis. And I agree. Hardship, trauma, and pain seem to be one shared reality for all of us humans, with 1,000 faces for how it can appear in our lives. And for anyone who's traversed a dark night of the soul, you will likely agree that without crawling in the dark, through the desert, on your hands and knees, you would never have become who you are today, nor would you have harvested the wisdom living in your body and bones, waiting to be revealed to you. At least, that's how each dark night has been for me. So, this is how it can look in our psyches when traversing a dark night. But next, I want to share how Dr. Bush frames this phenomenon from a biological perspective. Quote, the very fabric of biology, in the form of genes and proteins, is always iterating into a future possibility because life is wired to evolve. When a cataclysmic event occurs, it only makes things better for evolution because it puts all of our biology under stress. And when this occurs, genes will undergo what's called misspelling. This phenomenon of misspelling means that a gene is mutating or that a gene has occurred in a DNA sequence, potentially leading to a faulty protein or a disruption in the cell's normal function, which can contribute to disease. End of quote. After laying this framework, he explains upon the definition to say that misspells of genes also have the power to yield new creation, which has the ability to propagate new forms of existence that we've never seen before, and perhaps even to heal disease rather than cause it. This is similar to what the Netflix series resimulated by demonstrating that after a torched, flooded, and barren Earth with seemingly no life form left, a dynasty of dinosaurs is born. The main message here is that at the most microscopic level, life seeks to evolve and improve upon its former creations. One phenomenon he witnessed in the lab is called horizontal gene transfer, HGT. Instead of a vertical movement of gene material between organisms, such as the inheritance from a parent to an offspring like we do as humans, genes also have another movement that has evolved, which is no longer vertical in nature. Instead of this vertical move, genes have developed the ability to engage in a lateral or a horizontal gene transfer, which is a movement of genetic material between organisms that are not in a parent-offspring relationship. It's kind of like becoming a family with your neighbors, people that don't share a bloodline, but quickly become kin and create a new life together. In these HGT, or horizontal gene transfers, when an organism has a gain of function, it learns something new, it wants to share what it's learned with other life as a means to say, hey, look, we survived and here's how. Why don't you try it on? These genes operate like an open source data file, and any leap of evolution is shared across every form of life in the environment. If genetic material is being extinguished by a cancer cell before apoptosis, a fancy term for the death of a cell, it will pass along any data it's learned about thriving to the other cells rather than fight to survive. Embedded in its genetic language, it's basically saying, I'd rather share my genome and pass on this information so that life goes beyond me because I am part of the whole. There's no scarcity here. This demonstrates a generosity of spirit in the name of evolution and the name of life itself. And Dr. Bush elaborates on his observations by sharing that when you place a single cell in a petri dish, it will evolve and it will make changes. But it's not until you place that single cell into a petri dish with other cells that you begin to observe how generously they each communicate and share their knowledge. Again, it's an open source platform of technology. And the result often is the birth of some new evolutionary opportunity. In other words, according to his research, some cells will see the need to become extinct, but to first pass on the wisdom to other life forms in order to support evolution. There's no ego in this process, no protection of self. There is only one game, and it's let's evolve together. There's no separation. There's no scarcity. Open source technology at this micro biological level extends to all of life, nothing is left behind and everything benefits. But it's a different story for humans because our ability to open source and fall on the sword of our own existence to better the whole is buried underneath layers of scarcity, hoarding, and constructs of superiority and inferiority born from a survival of the fittest mentality. Perhaps we could even say that whatever point this began to take root in the human psyche along our timeline is concurrent with the birth of the lone wolf archetype. That sense of it's me against the world. The fabric of biology in the form of genes and proteins is always iterating into a future possibility. Life is wired to evolve. Just as the single cell in the petri dishes, when joined with others, seeks to share information and evolve, we humans hold the power to bring forth something new from the misspellings of our current evolution too. Yet how does this happen in the collective conditioning of separation, scarcity, and greed? I'm still mapping my frames around this and will share in later episodes. But meanwhile, I want to move on to one of the other compelling views that Dr. Bush brings related to why we humans experience separation. He believes that from a biological level, separation occurs as the result of having 5 senses: touch, taste, smell, sound, and vision. Each of these 5 senses provide us with the opportunity to individuate and to feel our separateness from the vast ocean of consciousness from which we are born. If we didn't have the opportunity to utilize our sense of taste when eating an apple and then eating an orange, we wouldn't understand they're different. We wouldn't have the perspective to experience the uniqueness of each separate spark of life. If we can't taste, touch, and so on, we remain in a singular pool of existence with no individuation. He continues with the perspective that the result of having these 5 senses that individuate us has a side effect, and that presents as a domino effect of feeling the need to protect ourselves from the vulnerabilities of being this exposed. So what does one do? We design a psyche and an ego to further the curation of fences around our oneness. We've been polishing the art of individuation for centuries. We've bear witness to dynasties and rulers who have amassed enough power, money, influence, land, and armies to dominate and control the majority of the remaining population of humans, and actually all of life. Slavery and indentured servants became a normalized way of life. That level of dehumanization became normal. And, as was the egoic view of superiority and domination, for the sake of this exploration, I want to weave my thinking with Dr. Bush's suggestion that the plight of human suffering and the schism of our collective psyche is based on a human experience that he calls abandonment disorder. This is defined as the shared wound of feeling separate, rejected, and therefore driven by a sense of scarcity, which amplifies behaviors of addiction and external seeking. If you've been following my writing over the past 6 years or the recent podcast episodes, you'll be familiar with this discourse. Again, Dr. Bush suggests that the evolutionary arc of becoming a mammal with 5 senses is one reason we developed this separation disorder. This phenomenon of being human and being part of the whole, but designed to feel our separateness, has over time indoctrinated many humans to lose our indigenous wisdom and behave as if we are separate from nature itself and from one another. And the separateness develops an ego that puts fences around us, which causes an increase in being driven by scarcity. And it's these mindsets that propel behaviors of domination, as well as collapsing into worthlessness when comparing ourselves to others. It's a full swing of superiority and inferiority complexes, riddled with guilt, shame, and denial of our interconnectedness to all of life. He shares an interesting twist on this human plight of feeling separate through the 5 senses by suggesting that humans have a special role as one of the most important forms of technology at this time. And he proposes that we are the CPU chip, the central processing unit, which is defined as the brain of a computer, a complex integrated circuit that executes instructions and manages the computer's operations. But from this metaphor, he suggests that we are designed to be a witness to nature because of the gift of having five senses. We are able to stand far away to see its beauty and have a direct experience of its divinity. And through our power of witnessing, appreciating, and feeling our hearts and bodies, we open this doorway. I frequently feel that when I'm plunging in a river. I feel like I'm remembering something fundamental about who I am. I imagine we could all name a way that when we engage with the natural world, we encounter some sense of deep peace, serenity, and oneness. If we start with our sense of vision, this can show up through taking in a breathtaking sunset, or through our sense of smell, when the perfume of butterscotch weeping from a ponderosa sap on a hot summer day fills our nose with delight. Or when the taste and sensation of a peach dripping down our neck releases pleasure and aliveness. Or when the touch of a lover in just the right way activates a sense of union. Or when the sound of a bird that sings so sweetly brings us to tears from its vibrational beauty. Our senses, while they may curate an experience of separation, also provide us with the power to feel these other creations moving through us, and maybe, just maybe, a sense of union. Dr. Bush believes that humans are the only mammals that will travel to the coast to gaze at the sunset just for the beauty and joy of it. No other species that he's observed, not monkeys or anything else, have taken the time to pause and receive the beauty. And I might argue that because I have witnessed marmots, prairie dogs, cats, and even my dog Angel intentionally shaping their little bodies directly into the sunlight to receive the beauty of that energy. But maybe that's just me anthropomorphizing. Yet, I think the point is the same. Being in our body and senses may curate a sense of feeling separate at a biological level. But perhaps at a spiritual and a heart level, we have the ability to move beyond the fences of ego, protection, and feel our connection to all of life. And I think that's the key term here, feeling our union with life. And it's much harder to access when we're distracted by human dynamics of perpetrator, victim, superiority, inferiority, trauma imprints, scarcity, and the fear of abandonment or rejection. The mind isn't going to show us how to be one. We have to feel it. We have to feel the beauty. We can't just intellectualize it. We have to feel oneness. We can't just intellectualize it. We experience wholeness through a mirror of love, beauty, and acceptance for all the parts that make up being human. We can't truly see another until we understand how our lens of reality is constantly categorizing others through our projections or the fantasies of who we want or need them to be, whether that's to soothe our sense of isolation, our needs, or our sense of belonging. This part of human condition doesn't need to change for us to have tastes of our oneness, tastes of our connection to all of life. What changes is our relationship to the mind, to the patterns of protection, and to the fear-based behaviors that cause self-preservation and scarcity of mind and heart. I like this quote from the podcast that Dr. Bush shares. He says, "I can't see your beauty until I understand myself and I have distance from you. When I'm in a hug from you, I can feel the beauty, but I can't see it." End of quote. Again, highlighting how information and content overload can be a dangerous trap and diversion in which we no longer feel our senses and are now living like a bobblehead in thoughts and fears. Can we feel from this place? Can we create new paradigms and creative solutions from this place of oversaturation and becoming lost in our mental space? Sure. The light of awareness will consistently seek to crack through the busyness of life and our mind. But will we sense these simple and frequent quiet moments knocking on our heart, on our mind, or our body's doors every day? That's the question. Do we make space for this in our lives? The real question is, what responsibility are we taking to cultivate the space needed in our lives to feel, to sense, to be reminded that we are the river, and we are those lightning strikes. We're the sturdy mountain peaks, and we're the fires that burn to purify and eliminate what no longer serves. We're the sun that warms one another with our love and kindness, and we're the moon that illuminates our emotional power and energy. We are the hawk circling the sky with clarity of sight and focus, and we are the hedgehog burying itself for protection. We are nature itself. Yet, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, quote, nature refers to the phenomena of the physical world collectively, including plants, animals, and other features and products of the earth, as opposed to humans and human creations, end of quote. Quite literally, Oxford Dictionary has written us out of the very definition of nature. And yet, our body is comprised of over 60% of water. Our digestive tract is fueled by heat and fire, as is our sexual drive. Our mind is often referred to as the element of air, expressing through thoughts, conceptual frameworks, and even the perceptions of reality that we're exploring today. And of course, space exists in our lungs, cells, and all parts of our body. And finally, Earth. We are the Earth. We are stardust. We are made of oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus, as is our beautiful blue planet. How can anyone argue that we are not nature? That we are not water, fire, air, earth, and space? Another quote from Dr. Bush: when we witness nature, we co-create with her, not against her. We are at one, but at a distance. And at a distance, we have a perspective that allows us to see the unique beauty in one another. That's why we're here. That's our gift as humans. We have the gift to give back to the nature of one another through feeling and witnessing. End of quote. I think we all know that one of the most treasured human experiences to be seen, not just because we've accomplished something extraordinary, but because of our ordinariness. And even, I would add, our human fragility. You know, like when we're seen in our most vulnerable and raw moments. Those times when we courageously reveal, or life does it for us, a part of us that we don't want to see, much less have revealed to anyone else. And yet, as a result, to our surprise, the other person or the people often embrace and love us even more as a result of these vulnerabilities, because they bring us together. They show us our oneness. They help us feel our solidarity. You know that feeling when you have a rupture with someone that you love? Maybe you've said something hurtful to protect yourself. Maybe you've withdrawn as a means to punish the other person for activating jealousy or even a sense of rejection inside of you. And despite the hurtful exchange, you have the level of self-awareness to own it and then to repair it. When you recognize the unintended impact and let the person know you see how your reactivity caused disconnection, you pour love towards yourself and also towards them. And in that moment, you are weaving yourself back into self-acceptance, back into humanity, and sending that horizontal wisdom gem to everyone around you. You are inviting collective evolution. And just like the genes, you're saying, hey, look what I learned. Try it out with me. When we own it, we open the door for a sense of oneness and love to emerge. When we continue to defend, we innocently reinforce shame, guilt, and blame, which at a felt sense level can cause a deep sense of separation. Yet, I imagine like you have noticed that despite these orientations in our psyche, stemming from an abandonment wound or scarcity, there is also an evolutionary gateway of transmuting these mindsets into a more accurate narrative. One that proves that as we gain more self-awareness and take down the fences of ego protection, we reveal our wisdom, heart intelligence, and our body intelligence, which has the power to transform wounds into wisdom, pain into medicine, hardship into victory, and hatred into perspective. To evolve is to transcend. And I don't mean bypass by slapping a sticker of positive thinking onto our painful experience or pouring the fifth glass of wine, but rather to befriend and study the patterns of our psyche that reinforce a feeling of separation and scarcity. To embody our power is to recognize when we're participating in the drama cycle of humanity. You know, those predictable 3 codependent archetypes of victim, perpetrator, and rescuer. This paradigm has been part of the human condition for centuries and perhaps will continue as long as we exist. But it's not the essence of who we are. We are creators. We have the power to dream and make manifest those dreams. The consciousness from which we dream and manifest can come from states of separation, scarcity, and a drive to amass power in order to fulfill our egoic desires. And the consciousness from which we dream and manifest can also be akin to those cells in the petri dish that are seeking the greatest evolutionary arc for all, even if it means extinction for its separate self, in order to pass on the wisdom to the whole. You know, it makes me think of those exquisite micro-optic world of the mycelium. Mycelium is the part of a fungus that is usually hidden from view in the soil and responsible for absorbing nutrients and water across large networks of species, not just its own mushroom self. Mycelium forms a vast, interconnected network that supports plants and ecosystems through nutrient exchange. And these networks of fungal threads serve as a powerful metaphor for how we humans create ecosystems through nutrient exchange. We do this through our relationships, shared experiences, vulnerability, emotions, and even ruptures that are followed by genuine repair and healing. We do this when we take the time to see one another's beauty, like the green flash of a sunset. We don't just focus on what's broken. We focus on the beauty too. If you want to have a 5-sense experience of this fiber optic network of intelligence, check out the documentary Fantastic Fungi. I think it's been out for probably 10 years by now, but it's a vivid journey into a mysterious subterranean world of mycelium and its fruits, the mushroom. It tells the story that began 3.5 billion years ago about how fungi makes the soil that supports life, connecting vast systems of roots from plants and trees all over the planet. It's a great visual to awaken the inner knowing and the felt sense of how interwoven all of life is, including us humans. Mycelium are noteworthy ancestors to whom I bow with such reverence. As I mentioned earlier, what's true for all humans is that we see reality through our history and our conditioning, and maybe even something deeper about our soul's destiny. Whatever the intricate makeup is, we have an inner landscape that we view life from. I have known despair and wondered at various times, why am I here? What's the point of all of this? I first remember this at age 4, then 6, and again at 13 when my older brother was killed in a car accident. The question has followed me throughout my life, coming and going with its medicine to invite me into how, in this very moment, I choose to ground into why I'm here. I've also known oneness, a sense of existing within a wide, open heart of acceptance within myself. And I've also felt myself as the snowflake falling from the sky, or as my partner deep inside of me while making love. Love expands my heart and reveals the true nature of my being. Sometimes the darkness has the power to reveal a new path and create a horizontal leap that we then share with others, collectively catalyzing a new movement. And sometimes despair, it takes us further away from ourselves into a dark hole. And while despair can take us to our knees, I wonder if in the same way those genes misspell to form a new strand of DNA in that lateral horizontal leap, if despair also invites a horizontal gene transfer, a transfer that invites a form of evolutionary possibility within each of us from the depths of our own despair. And if so, how do we cultivate the staying power to feel and not distract with addictive behaviors and avoidance when difficult emotional states move through us? Which is why I feel the importance of cultivating a relationship with our guardians, our ancestors, and our protectors, asking them to show us the way through the eye of the needle, from the darkness of despair into the misspelling of ourselves into something brand new. Perhaps something that resembles a deeper abiding in our sense of wholeness, amidst evil and unthinkable hardship. Again, I don't have the answers, nor am I a scientist, but I am a free thinker. I am a weaver of concepts and possibilities. I carry within me a yearning to unite hearts and minds, a curiosity about how we as humans can mimic this genetic generosity of the DNA misspelling phenomenon as a means to move beyond centuries of domination and powerlessness through the power dynamics of perpetrator, rescuer, and victim. Or maybe this interplay of archetypes and the associated power dynamics is the curriculum for life on Earth. Ugh. If that's the case, what a limiting form of creative potential. I like to imagine there's something else possible beyond that, a new form of embodiment that will curate the next version of humanity, the next version of life. And while that sounds good, I recognize it could require an extinction. Or perhaps this transformation could resemble the brilliance of the caterpillar who attacks its own immune system, turns its innards into mush as a means to reconstruct a whole new life form, a whole new way of navigating through the world with wings instead of countless chubby little legs. If you're still here with me, please understand that what I'm sharing is potential, a dream for life itself, not a recipe for how to stop the current chaos or madness of dehumanization, separation, and scarcity that causes disease in the human mind and heart. I don't have the answers for that. But just like I imagine is true for you, I'm listening for them. I'm mining for them. I'm praying for them. What if Dr. Bush's suggestion that we are the technology needed to create a quantum leap of evolution through our human care, connection, hugs, and heart intelligence is true? What if the obsession with collecting data, proving our narratives, and operating on our limiting assumptions could shift? What if filling and busying our minds is actually taking us further away from the rich depth of being seen and known from the inside out, seen by our own heart and mind, as well as those around us? We are no different than those isolated cells in a petri dish. Once transported into a dish with other cells, there is an acceleration of potential and creative power, a power that alchemizes through the fiber optics of our intelligences communicating with one another, which is beyond obsessive thinking and mental masturbation. What if your ability to see the beauty in a river, a child, a lover, or a group of humans does indeed send a message through the fiber optic threads of connection and remind us of our union, solidarity, and oneness, if not conceptually, energetically? What if your heart is the mycelium transporting nourishment when you take the time to be present and open in your heart? Can this be a flame of transformation that shifts humanity's impact on the planet? I don't know. Will humanity be the cause of our next extinction? I don't know that either. If humanity continues to consume from the abandonment disorder and reinforce behaviors of scarcity and hoarding resources, will we leave behind the blueprint for a creation of life that exists beyond these fractures of separation? And if so, will life return to populate the earth as an evolved species? I don't know, but nature sure seems to indicate a high probability of that pattern and extinction sequence being likely. Perhaps, as some say, Earth is a school for evil and good to play out the drama of victim, perpetrator, and rescuer. Will that cycle ever burn its fuse and transform? I don't know. What I do know is that this is a time of crisis. And to quote Zach Bush, humanity only changes direction when there's crisis. End of quote. What can we do? Keep evolving ourselves and spread that wisdom and frequency through the fiber optic cables of our communication, our eye contact, our touch, our care, our listening, our curiosity, our open-mindedness, our open-heartedness, and the grace of self-acceptance for all of our neuroses and human conditioning, yours and mine. And at times, that's a really tall order in a world of distracting technology, information overload, trauma, and chaos. I believe that when we practice these moments of presence and truly, truly seeing one another, we become the Jedis working like mycelium underground, not in opposition, but in a fiery devotion to pump the necessary nourishment of perspective, heart intelligence, and emotional stability through the entire network of humanity, which of course serves all of life. And the more time we spend in nature, the more we reveal a deep wisdom within. Whether that's quieting our mind to feel the beauty of the sunrise warming our body and awakening our mitochondria, or the healing powers of sitting by a river and receiving its purifying energy and negative ions. Or when we are gifted with receiving the love of someone who accepts us no matter how much darkness we may feel inside, or how much we may display through our reactivity and defensiveness, we still are loved. If the movement is about fighting good and evil, will we ever transcend the duality on this planet? Are we meant to transcend the duality on this planet? Guess what? I don't know. What I know is that it feels a shit ton better to take responsibility for the ways that I behave, using Dr. Bush's term, through the abandonment disorder and my own patterns of scarcity. When I'm honest about how I reinforce these patterns by keeping my egoic fences tight and high, I make some space. Maybe I even become available to receive from you a lob over the fence from your horizontal gem of self-acceptance that you've cultivated, which I then employ towards accepting my own human limitations with that same grace and love. We humans know how to navigate paradoxes and complex contradictions. And here is where that gift can serve. What does it take to cultivate a capacity to hold the contradictory experience of both being one with all of creation while simultaneously living in a five senses body that is designed to experience separateness? That could feel like a mindfuck if we struggle to hold a paradox of two seemingly opposite things being true at once. I find that when my mind understands a perspective or a framework to hold paradoxes and contradictions, my internal noise quiets down. As I said earlier, these musings are not an attempt to propose that this is the reality of human existence. That would be arrogant and microscopic in nature. But it is a frame to wrestle with our constructs and why we are here, and what we can do to evolve beyond the contradictions and the contractions of the schism of the ego mind. I clearly don't have the answers as to how we become humans who mimic DNA's horizontal gene transfer to create a collective evolutionary leap. But I do know a few things. With the onset of AI and the gifts that it brings, there are also shadows in how it is used and will be used to support old mindsets of domination and power over. With the collective trauma in humanity's DNA and psyche, we are swimming upstream in a world conditioned to seek externally to feel safe and belonging, which often requires an abdication of our own inner authority. In a world in which social media's dark side is intentionally designed to reinforce isolation, cause our brain to become addicted to dopamine hits and distractions through architecting algorithms that predict and drive our behavior, we have to find our sovereignty and take ownership for where we're placing our attention and energy. We have to stop the madness. Another divisive nature of social media's dark side is the way it feeds into inferiority complex of unworthiness when we compare our lives to the fabricated ones we see online. If the increase in teenage suicide rates due to feeling inadequate when counting followers and comments don't measure up isn't a wake-up call to the dark side of this mind control, then what is? When AI is used to propagate a state of mind addicted to being distracted and disconnected from our bodies and our five senses, we have to stay awake and see this occurring. And then we have to activate our awareness, our sovereignty, and creative power to make new choices and transform them into something new. As we come to a close, I want to share a bit of how I'm navigating life at this moment, starting with a summary that whatever and whenever there is chaos in the world, humans seek meaning. When we encounter a problem, we seek solutions. It's part of our gift. It's part of our ability to survive as long as we have. We creatively innovate new ways of addressing broken processes and systems. For example, long ago, our ancestors discovered fire, this element of nature, and they used it to channel it as a resource to warm their food and cook their food, solving for the need for longer storage and surplus while operating without modern-day refrigeration. The truth is, I haven't been consuming the news like my friends. I have sometimes wished that I was, And I honestly at times feel guilty that I'm not. But I know better than to take the bait and turn against myself for standing in my own inner authority and doing what feels most true for me. I am devoted to the practice of trusting my instincts about how to tend to my inner wisdom and intelligence during this time. And it's not easy. In early January, I was guided to commit to a very robust 90-day meditation and breath practice while spending as much time in nature as possible. I stay current on the news, but at a light touch. Here's how I'm spending my time. I am immersing myself in connections where open-mindedness and open-heartedness wraps us up while we grapple with the current reality on the planet. I am hanging out with friends who are willing to withhold judgment and share and explore our varying perspectives. I'm lying on my biomat at night, under the stars, seeking connection, being moved by their beauty. I'm plunging my body in frigid, cold river pools here in Colorado to activate the aliveness in my body and my immune system. I'm wandering through the woods with my dog, listening to the silence, awakening my five senses through the beauty of the trees, the rocks, and the smells of earth. I'm seeking connection from my meditation cushion at dawn as the sun crests the mountaintop and warms my face. And before I go to bed, I usually sit by my bedroom window and gaze upon the moon, seeking connection and nourishment from her luminous light. I'm tucked away by a warm, burning fire, most nights seeking connection from the flames and the sounds of the sap crackling and popping as it releases the scent of the forest into my living room. I find that the elements of nature are the wisdom keepers to whom I'm turning to right now. And unlike the Oxford Dictionary, I do include humans as part of nature. I go to nature not because I'm finding mental answers, although I'm often given guidance or insight, but because I'm touching something primal about beauty, connection, home, belonging, acceptance, and even oneness. I'm seeking wisdom however it finds me through the elemental world, animals, and my fellow humans. And on that note, I want to close with one of my favorite children's short stories called Frederick by Leo Lionni. All along the meadow where the cows grazed and the horses ran, there was an old stone wall. In that wall, not far from the barn and the granary, a chatty family of field mice had their home. But the farmers had moved away, the barn was abandoned, and the granary stood empty. And since winter was not far off, the little mice began to gather corn and nuts and wheat and straw. They all worked day and night, all except Frederick. "Frederick, why don't you work?" they asked. "I do work," said Frederick. "I gather sun rays for the cold, dark winter days." And when they saw Frederick sitting there, staring at the meadow, they said, "And now, Frederick?" "I gather colors," answered Frederick simply, "for winter is gray." And once Frederick seemed half asleep. "Are you dreaming, Frederick?" they asked reproachfully. But Frederick said, "Oh, no, I'm gathering words, for the winter days are long and many, and we'll run out of things to say." The winter days came, and when the first snow fell, the 5 little field mice took their hideout in the stones. In the beginning, there was lots to eat, and the mice told stories of foolish foxes and silly cats. They were a happy family. But little by little, they had nibbled up most of the nuts and berries, the straw was gone, and the corn was only a memory. It was cold in the wall, and no one felt like chatting. Then they remembered what Frederick had said about the sun rays and colors and words. "What about your supplies, Frederick?" they asked. "Close your eyes," said Frederick, and he climbed on a big stone. "Now I send you rays of sun. Do you feel how their golden glow warms you?" And as Frederick spoke of the sun, the 4 little mice began to feel warmer. Was it Frederick's voice? Was it magic? "And how about the colors, Frederick?" they asked anxiously. "Close your eyes again," Frederick said. And when he told them of the blue periwinkles, the red poppies, and the yellow wheat, and the green leaves of the berry brush, and they saw colors as clearly as if they had painted them in their own minds. "And the words, Frederick?" Frederick cleared his throat, waited a moment, and then said, as if from a stage, he said, "Who scatters the snowflakes? Who melts the ice? Who spoils the winter? Who makes it nice? Who grows the 4-leaf clovers in June? Who dims the daylight? Who lights the moon? 4 little field mice who live in the sky." 4 little field mice, like you and I. One is the spring mouse, who turns on the showers. Then comes the summer, who paints the flowers. The fall mice is next with walnuts and wheat, and winter is last with little cold feet. Aren't we lucky the seasons are 4? Think of a year with one less or one more. When Frederick had finished, they all applauded. But Frederick, they said, you are a poet. Frederick blushed, took a bow, and said shyly, I know it. There's just something so sweet about that story. All of these mice play a role in this horizontal transfer of evolutionary intelligence and taking care of one another. The busy mice collecting food, those storing the food, as well as Frederick, who is drinking in the oneness with the sun, the colors, and the textures, and later sharing it with everyone. Whatever your contribution is, it matters. You matter. Your state of mind matters. Your willingness to feel your emotions and interrupt patterns of distraction matters. Your capacity to access your heart intelligence and not spiral out in mental states of control and fear, it matters. Your presence matters. I know I've said a lot today, and I want to close with this final invitation. I have some cooking, and this is where you come in. As I've been saying today, we are in wild times, and most of us know that we need to be our most grounded and powerful selves in order to navigate the chaos. I think our greatest power comes not just from the mind, but from embracing the intelligence of all of our senses, our heart, our wild self, even our erotic nature. I want to introduce the Revealing Wisdom Revolution, a transformational community and membership designed to help you recalibrate your nervous system and integrate all 6 power sources while stepping into leadership and regularly expressing yourself authentically. This process is designed to shift you out of unconscious survival patterns and into embodied heart-centered leadership. Together, we'll take a deep dive into all 6 power gateways that form the foundation of the power reclamation system. Your membership is composed of a 2-month deep dive into each one of the power gateways, giving you time to embody and integrate its teachings. And as a reminder, for those of you who aren't familiar, the 6 gateways are centering power, which is our ability to stay grounded amidst chaos. And even, I might add, our ability to ground enough where we can do those horizontal transfers with one another. Relational power, which is navigating human dynamics with integrity, depth, and clarity, and heart. Self-acceptance power is liberating ourselves from shame and self-judgment and from layers of conditioning and trauma. Wild power is about tapping into our primal intelligence and our instinctual life force. Intuitive power is learning to trust and act from our deep knowing, to reclaim our sovereignty and our inner authority in a world that's asking us to distract away from it almost every moment. And erotic power is honoring the creative life force within us that's both can be generated through sexuality, but also just through our creative presence. The membership will include weekly live calls, which will have a blend of teaching, embodiment practices, and group wisdom sessions. And with each power, as I mentioned earlier, with those 6 powers, we'll take one and go through in depth for a 2-month period of time. And in that period of time, you will have the option to opt into a 40-day embodiment practice that you'll do every single day and share about it in the community. This will include some kind of breath work, movement potentially, some sort of meditation, and all the sequences will be tailored to the particular power we're working on at that time. And also there'll be a space to connect in a private community where you can celebrate the shifts. We can open the gates for these horizontal transfers and get support as life throws challenges our way. Ultimately, to be seen and to be known is what I hope for in these meetings and this membership, because it's in seeing and knowing and recognizing the beauty of ourselves in one another that I believe we begin to evolve into something new. This membership is for revolutionaries that are hiding in plain sight. Those of you with boots on the ground as the modern day mystics who seek to connect your heart, your mind, your body, all your intelligence without forsaking your primal humanity. And those of you who want to consciously explore the playground of horizontal gene transfer as we reveal our wisdom and reclaim our power together. Bring your minds, your hearts, your bodies to expand this petri dish of community, vulnerability, and evolution. This is a time where it may be easy to resist the changes at hand, which is why I feel we must lean in. And where we're leaning from really matters. The state of mind, the emotional regulation, the connection to our hearts and our 5 senses, and our immersion into nature, which includes one another. As I mentioned earlier, our nervous systems are wired to avoid discomfort, especially when it comes to the shadowy and messy parts of ourselves. Society conditions us to seek control, logic, and perfection while dismissing the raw, instinctual intelligence that fuels our deepest power. True power, true reclamation, requires us to meet and embrace these exiled parts. The vulnerability we fear is ironically the key to our transformation. Shame and unprocessed grief or anger and self-doubt may feel painful, but they hold the keys to a new threshold of power. Our sticky, shadowy bits are not enemies, but doorways. It is the spiritual warriors who are willing to step through these doorways, to have the power needed to stay sovereign in a time of chaos, in a time when we're being continually coaxed outside of ourselves, to dive into our exiled parts for greater power. When we learn to befriend our fragmented parts, we transform them. And this is the path to true power, seeing, embracing, and mapping our defense strategies so that they no longer unconsciously drive our actions, drive our mind states. And as a somatic coach, a nervous system specialist, and a leadership mentor with close to 3 decades of experience, helping leaders free and break free from cycles of burnout, overstimulation, and self-doubt, I'm diving in with all I've got to curate a space for revolution and evolution. So if you're ready, join. Would love to have you. My hope is that this opportunity will help you to expand your nervous system's capacity to hold the greater complexity at hand and to strengthen your ability to stay rooted, clear, and confident amidst all this uncertainty, and to discover where you already wield power with ease and where you want to be integrating more of your power, to reveal the wisdom within you and to share it with others as we catalyze an evolutionary movement. This is more than a membership. It's a movement. It's a place of belonging, a place for conscious, heart-led leaders to integrate wisdom, reclaim their voice, and wield their power with unwavering clarity. Given the increasing chaos in political events, social movements, and the trauma fields that we live in, we need to know our ground, the power of our higher intelligence, and the way to both activate and sustain living from this source of wisdom in all that we do. So the first 20 members who join will only be $66 a month. After that, the membership will increase. So join me and this revealing wisdom revolution to reveal your soft wisdom, tap your inner ferocity, and rise with unwavering inner authority. If you're feeling called, please make sure to sign up for my newsletter and be the first to know when registration opens next month. The link to my newsletter is in the show notes. I would also like to put into the larger web here through each of you that I am looking for a sponsor for my podcast to allow me to record more frequently and reach more people. My big dream is to mirror the model that Josh with the Emerald podcast has launched recently, where he's doing fundraising through his podcast and then distributing grants to people and projects who are fostering the new world and human. So please spread the word if you feel moved to help me manifest this vision. Again, thanks for being here today. I hope you enjoyed the show today. If you want more, you can subscribe to this channel. This will automatically queue up the next episode for your listening. If you have a burning question or topic you want to learn more about, please send an email to Ask Anne-Marie. The direct link is located in the show notes. And please leave a review. This keeps me inspired and focused to bring you more. If you want to learn more about my work as a power reclamation guide, leadership coach, and organizational culture consultant, you can visit my websites in the notes. Thank you again for joining today.